I still remember the day it all started. It was a Tuesday, gray and rainy, the kind of morning that makes you want to stay in bed, hiding from the world. But there I was, sitting at my desk, staring at my computer, pretending I wasn't listening to the low hum of the office gossip. That's when my boss, Mr. Caro, leaned over my cubicle and whispered something that would change my life forever. I need a favor. It's urgent, and I can make it worth your while $50,000. At first, I laughed. Maybe it was the absurdity, maybe it was the shock. My mind immediately raced. $50,000. That's life-changing, but a favor from Caro. He doesn't give anything without strings. What kind of favor? I asked cautiously, my heart already starting to beat faster. You'd have to testify in court, he said. Nothing huge, just bend the truth a little. A few details, nothing major. It's for the company's benefit. I froze. Testify in court me. My boss offering me tens of thousands to lie in front of a judge. It felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into a movie I didn't audition for. Part of me wanted to run out of the office screaming. Another part felt the pull of the money. Rent was overdue, my student loans were suffocating me, and my little sister's medical bills were piling up. I could see exactly what $50,000 would do. Then the truth, I repeated, trying to sound casual. And this is legal. He smiled in that way bosses smile when they're hiding a secret. It'll be perfectly legal if handled correctly. Just make it look like you saw things one way, not another. I nodded, but inside I was shaking. I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment marked the beginning of a series of events I couldn't have imagined. The tension in my chest didn't fade as I went through the rest of my day. I kept imagining the courtroom, the gavel slamming down, the eyes of the judge on me and the weight of $50,000 sitting like a golden promise on the table. By the time I left work, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening like polished glass. I walked aimlessly, my thoughts spinning. I kept asking myself, would I actually do it? Could I? Or would I end up ruining my life in the process? That night, I tossed and turned, the thought of money battling with my conscience. I imagined my parents, who had always drilled honesty into me, and my little sister, whose trust I'd never want to betray. And yet, the temptation was intoxicating. I didn't make a decision that night, but I did decide to meet with Caro the next morning, to hear him out, to understand exactly what he wanted. Little did I know, that meeting would take me deeper into a world I never wanted to enter, where the lines between right and wrong blurred so much that I started questioning myself. And just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, Caro dropped the twist that no one could have expected. But I'll get to that in the next part. When I arrived at Caro's office the next morning, he greeted me with that same calm, controlled smile, as if he had already anticipated my hesitation. The office smelled faintly of leather and expensive coffee, one of those small luxuries that made you forget your own anxiety for a moment. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. We'll go through the details. As he outlined the case, my stomach sank. The lawsuit wasn't some abstract corporate squabble. It involved one of the company's biggest clients, a client whose reputation could sink overnight if certain facts were exposed. And my role, my words could tip the balance completely. You'll just testify that you saw things a certain way, Caro said, and everything will look entirely plausible. No one will doubt you. You know the company depends on this, and I know this is a lot to ask. But the reward? Well, you understand. I understood. Too well. I understood that my life could change, for better or worse, in an instant. And yet, I hesitated. Why me? I asked. There must be someone else who. Because you're careful, smart, and no one will question you, he interrupted. I've watched you for years. I know what you're capable of. His words were like a knife twisting in my chest. Flattered, terrified, and suspicious all at once. But I didn't respond. I just nodded and tried to pretend I wasn't thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. That night, I started researching. I Googled case law, courtroom strategies, even past instances of perjury. The more I read, the more I realized how precarious this whole situation was. One wrong word, one poorly phrased sentence, and I could be facing criminal charges, not just losing a paycheck. Then came the real shock. While I was pacing my apartment, trying to weigh morals against survival, I received a text from Caro. Meet me tomorrow at 6 p.m. We need to go over a few details. Bring your notebook. The words made my chest tighten. Details. That's not a meeting, that's a test. A trap, maybe? I started to imagine every worst-case scenario. Cameras in the office, secret recordings, the possibility that he was testing my loyalty or my weakness. I went to sleep uneasy, dreaming of courtrooms filled with shadowy figures, whispers in hallways, and the haunting echo of a gavel. I woke up thinking about one question. Could I actually betray the truth for money? And when the moment came to meet Caro again, I would be forced to make a choice that would push me further than I ever thought I could go. I walked into the meeting with Caro feeling a strange mix of dread and curiosity. The office lights were dimmer than usual, casting long shadows across the floor, like some suspenseful movie scene. He motioned for me to sit, and I noticed a thick manila envelope sitting on his desk. "This is everything you need," he said casually, sliding the envelope toward me. "Dates, times, witness statements, all the pieces. Your part is simple. Just testify according to these notes." I hesitated, staring at the envelope as if it could bite. Something in my gut screamed, "Don't do it. This is wrong. You're about to cross a line you can't uncross." But then my eyes flicked to the number in my bank account, in my mind $50,000. Just imagine it, rent cleared, debts wiped, my sister's medical bills covered, maybe even a weekend escape somewhere. My heart thudded. "Why are you trusting me with this?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He smiled, but there was something unreadable behind it. "Because you're reliable. And I know you want what's best for yourself, just as much as I want what's best for the company." We went over the notes. Every detail seemed meticulously crafted, every date and name accounted for. It was terrifyingly perfect. And then, in a quiet moment, he said something that made me freeze. "One thing, though. If you decide not to follow through, it won't just affect the case. It could get messy, very messy. Are you sure you want to gamble with that?" The weight of his words pressed down on me. I realized I wasn't just choosing to lie in court, I was stepping into a dangerous game. If I refused, I could lose my job, my career, maybe even become a target. If I agreed, I risked my integrity, my freedom, maybe even prison. That night, I stayed awake, pacing in my small apartment, staring at the city lights through the window. I kept imagining the courtroom, the judge looking down at me, the jury watching my every word, and my own hands trembling as I recited a story I knew wasn't entirely true. And then came the thought I couldn't shake: what if someone else finds out I'm lying? What if my conscience betrays me? I tried talking to my best friend, Sam, about it, without revealing too much. "Sometimes you have to do what you have to do to survive," Sam said casually, sipping his coffee. "But you need to be smart about it. Think 3 steps ahead." 3 steps ahead. That became my mantra. I couldn't let panic or temptation decide for me. I had to plan, to anticipate, to survive this without losing myself completely. The next morning, I made a decision, or at least I thought I did. I would go through with the meeting, hear everything Caro wanted, but I wouldn't commit. I needed more information. I needed leverage. I needed time. But when I got to the office, I found an envelope waiting at my desk. It wasn't from Caro. It had no name, no handwriting, just the words, "You're being watched. Decide carefully." The day of the supposed final preparation meeting arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a storm. The envelope, the note, Caro's warnings, they all merged into a constant hum of tension in my head. I couldn't tell who I could trust. My phone felt heavier than usual, as if it carried the weight of every decision I hadn't yet made. Caro greeted me as usual, but this time his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You got my note, I assume," he said, leaning forward. "Yes," I replied cautiously. Who sent it?" He shrugged, pretending ignorance. "Doesn't matter. What matters is the choice you're about to make. You can do this the easy way or the hard way." We went through the notes again. Every detail felt more like a trap than a guideline. And then, just as I was beginning to question my ability to go through with it, he said the words that made my stomach drop. "You'll testify tomorrow morning. If you hesitate, I'll know. If you resist, things could get complicated. I trust you know what I mean." That night, I barely slept. I ran every scenario through my mind, agreeing, refusing, walking away, going to the authorities, even disappearing. And then it hit me: I had a choice I hadn't considered until that moment. I could use this situation to my advantage, not by lying, not by submitting blindly, but by controlling the narrative. If I could gather evidence, record conversations, and prepare myself. I might not just survive this, I might flip the script entirely. I spent the night planning, quietly collecting every scrap of information I could. Emails, notes, past incidents, even casual office conversations, anything that could help me understand Caro's game. And as dawn approached, I realized something terrifying. I was no longer just deciding about money or truth. I was now part of a dangerous game of power, manipulation, and deception, and losing could mean everything. By the time I reached the courtroom the next morning, I felt a mix of fear, adrenaline, and determination. Caro was watching, the notes were in my pocket, and every step I took echoed with the possibility of disaster. I didn't yet know that what I was about to uncover inside that courtroom would change everything I thought I knew about my boss, the company, and even myself. Walking into the courtroom that morning felt like stepping into a different world. The air was thick with tension, the scent of polished wood and legal paper filling my lungs. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Caro was seated confidently at the counsel table, eyes trained on me. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, and I realized that in just a few minutes, my life could change forever. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of the plan I had painstakingly prepared overnight. I wasn't going to lie blindly. I had copies of emails, office memos, and even a secretly recorded conversation that could expose manipulation or pressure. I had my evidence, my conscience, and a resolve I didn't know I could summon. The judge called the case, and my name was summoned. I walked forward, every step measured, every heartbeat a drum. Caro's eyes flicked toward me, sharp and calculating. I opened the envelope he had given me, but instead of reading his notes verbatim, I spoke carefully, truthfully, and deliberately. I framed the events as I had witnessed them, but I also inserted subtle references to inconsistencies in the company's statements, questions I had uncovered through my overnight research. Caro's confident smirk began to falter. I watched him fidget in his chair, glancing at lawyers, papers, and me, as though realizing that this game was no longer under his control. Every statement I made, every fact I introduced, chipped away at the narrative he had tried to construct. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the opposing lawyers asked a seemingly innocuous question, something I had anticipated. And I revealed the recording I had made. The room went silent. Caro's face went pale. He realized that not only could I not be controlled, but now I held undeniable leverage. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully, eyebrows raised. Caro tried to speak, to intervene, but I had already turned the tide. In a quiet, firm voice, I concluded my testimony, emphasizing facts I had witnessed and discrepancies I had uncovered. I felt a strange sense of power, strange because it was a power rooted not in money or fear, but in truth. When the case adjourned for a short recess, Caro approached me, voice low and furious. "You think you've won," he hissed. "I think I've survived," I replied, keeping my calm. "And if you try anything against me, I have everything I need." The rest of the day passed in a blur of legal maneuvering, discussions behind closed doors, and tense moments that made my stomach churn. But by evening, it became clear. The company's case had collapsed, and Caro was facing scrutiny he hadn't anticipated. My honest, strategic approach had exposed enough inconsistencies to force a settlement and protect me from any repercussions. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and pride. I hadn't taken the $50,000. I hadn't lied. And somehow, by staying true to my conscience while being clever and prepared, I had not only survived but turned a situation designed to trap me into an opportunity to assert my own agency. Later, I reflected on the surreal sequence of events. I realized that temptation, fear, and opportunity often collide in ways that force you to confront who you truly are. Caro had offered me wealth and danger in a single package, expecting me to compromise myself. But the real lesson was clear. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stand firm, to act with integrity, and to trust your instincts even when the stakes are astronomical. And as I walked away that night, the city lights glistening like polished glass, I couldn't help but smile. I had faced a moral and legal storm, and I had come out stronger. I didn't need $50,000 to validate myself. I had discovered that courage, careful thinking, and integrity were far more valuable. Sometimes, life throws a choice at you that seems impossible. Money, fear, power, they can all cloud your judgment. But in the end, the truth has a way of shining through. And it's far more rewarding than anything a briefcase of cash could buy.